Добрый день. Well, I shall be speaking today, as Leonid said, on some of the key findings of the UNESCO Science Report. This report appeared in November last year, so it's very recent. It's produced by UNESCO every 5 years as a monitoring tool of trends and developments in science, technology and innovation policy and governance around the world. And I now have 20 minutes to summarize the world. So one of the first messages of the report is that despite the global financial crisis of 2008-2009, research expenditure grew faster than the global economy, and quite considerably faster. This was the case not only for expenditure, but also for the number of researchers, and logically also the number of scientific publications. And we're looking here at the period 2007-2013, and for scientific publications the period is up to 2014, and the data we're using for publications are from the Thomson Reuters Web of Science. So one of the trends that pushed research expenditure up, and the number of researchers and the number of scientific publications, was China. It now has overtaken the USA. It has more researchers in the USA. It is second only to the USA for research expenditure and scientific publications. Now, on this graph, for those at the back, the bars on the left in green are for GDP. Research expenditure is in beige, brown. Then you have researchers, the two bars, for 2009 and 2013. And lastly, publications in blue. And what is interesting when you look at this graph, you can see from the arrows which world shares have gone down, which have remained the same. And it's interesting to note that in Latin America, the world shares have more or less remained the same. They have not managed to use the commodities boom to raise their contribution to world science. But if you look at China, and the Republic of Korea has also made very impressive progress, but as it's a smaller country, it's making less of an impact than China. What is interesting, if you look at China, the bars, China now reproduces the same pattern as the leaders for R&D worldwide, the USA, the European Union, Japan, in that its contribution to research expenditure is now much bigger than its contribution to world GDP. So why the steep rise in research spending despite the crisis? Well, in fact, in advanced economies struggling with austerity budgets, public commitment dropped. Not in all countries, there are exceptions, but in many advanced economies, public commitment to research dropped. But overall, R&D expenditure remained high and grew because it was compensated for by the business sector. Now, what's interesting is that businesses sought to conjugate the crisis by maintaining or increasing their own investment in research. We're also seeing in many lower-income countries that they have used the growth, the economic growth fueled by the commodities boom, to raise their own public commitment to research. A lot of countries, I've listed some of them, but you're seeing it in a lot of countries. And as a result, we have a strange situation where, for example, Argentina and the UK now have the same level of public commitment to R&D. The UK has gone down, and Argentina has gone up, and Mexico has also gone up. This is represented graphically here. You can see that the curve starts descending at about the level of 2008 for the top countries. An exception here, of course, is Germany, which managed to maintain and improve its public commitment to R&D. And the data here come from the UNESCO Institute for Statistics. Then you see on the right-hand side the countries that are circled. They are getting closer to one another. You have Japan at the top within the elongated circle, Canada, then you have the UK, China and Argentina all together, and then you have Poland, South Africa and Mexico. However, at the global level, there is a persistent divergence when it comes to business expenditure on research. What's noteworthy here is if you look at the brown line for China, it has risen very steeply, but Mexico and Argentina, which have improved their public commitment to R&D, they are still at the bottom of the graph when it comes to business expenditure on R&D. The Russian Federation is the red line in the bottom third. So here we have a graph showing what happened. It starts at 2001, but you can see that from 2008 onwards, there is a steep climb for China above all, but also India. And this corresponds rather neatly to the decline of North America, because the business sector in the USA suffered a lot between 2009 and 2011, and it was only beginning to recover in 2012. So this reflects the impact of the crisis on the USA, essentially. Spending also went down considerably in Canada. Now at the bottom of the graph, what's interesting here is that you can see that much of the world still contributes very little to business expenditure. Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, former Soviet states, they're all at the bottom. Now patents are still dominated by what we call the trust to identify and guide and help startups that have the potential to be disruptive, in other words, to create new markets. The National Research Foundation provides 85% of funding, and the rest comes from the incubator. In the USA, you have an emerging situation whereby large corporations are funding disruptive startups because they feel that it is more cost effective than having to acquire the technology produced by these young competitors. Another message from the report is that although science powers commerce, it serves other purposes, and public governments should not lose sight of this. With public budgets being under pressure in many advanced economies, there has been a temptation in recent years, particularly in Australia and Canada, to divert public money away from government science towards the commercialization end of the innovation cycle. A cultural revolution. The government feels that its development model is no longer suited to global markets, and it would like to correct the impression that it develops so fast through imitation alone, that it has no endogenous basic science capacity. The government strategy is to foster linkages between basic sciences and business. It is creating its own form of a Silicon Valley, the International Science Business Belt. A National Basic Science Institute opened on site in 2011, and businesses on site will be able to use a heavy ion accelerator. I said earlier that Korea was investing more in R&D. It plans to devote 5% of GDP to R&D by 2017. It has raised its share of spending on basic research to 18%. And its two main priority areas for research are green technology, and this dates from 2008, it's not new, and creative industries. Creative industries, but also developing a more creative entrepreneurial culture. And this is why I refer to a cultural revolution, because Korea traditionally has relied on its chaebols, its large enterprises, but now it wants to develop entrepreneurship. And this brings me to the fourth industrial revolution. This term refers to the digitalizing of industry to revitalize manufacturing. And all the countries listed here are anxious to revitalize their manufacturing sector. Germany, France, China, the USA, India, they all have programs which you can see listed here. And one focus of this fourth industrial revolution are these creative industries. creative industries that are increasingly web-based. The photo at the bottom of this slide, you can see is a building. Well, this is an office building that is being printed in Dubai by a Chinese firm. And even the furniture are going to be printed. Now, at the bottom, I just noted that the digital society, the digital economy, PhD holders in Switzerland is foreign born, 1 in 3. And Switzerland was one of the countries that improved its share of triad patents between 2002 2012. The biggest leap among high-income countries, so Switzerland is doing very well. A couple of examples of governments fostering mobility. For the European Union, EU institutions must advertise vacancies. The EU has established a scientific visa to make it easier for non-European Union applicants to apply for jobs. There is Brazil's Science Without Borders scheme, which gave scholarships to Brazilian students to study abroad in science and engineering, and also brought researchers from abroad to work with local researchers. And my last slide, I'd just like to cite a study that was done by the European Union. Studies conducted across Europe have shown that a high level of mobility by qualified personnel between sectors and across countries contributes to the overall professionalism of the labour force and innovative performance of the economy. With that, I'd like to thank you for your attention. And below you have a link to the UNESCO Science Report, which is open access. You can download it. You can also buy a copy if you would like to. And outside, when you leave the room, we have the report in English on a USB key. You're all warmly invited to take a key with you. And we also have some summaries of the report in Russian. Thank you for your attention.